Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's webinar. Welcome to our 14th webinar under the banner One on Education. It is absolutely wonderful to see so many of you with us at this event. I am Kavita Iyer, Senior Product Specialist, Orient Black Swan. We feel happy and privileged to be collaborating with Samvad in today's webinar. Samvad is an integrated resource for child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care, supported by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. Samvad Center is steered by NIMHANS and is located in their Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Samvad aims at enhancing child and adolescent psychosocial well being, particularly of children in difficult circumstances, through promotion of integrated approaches to mental health and protection. In this two-part webinar, Samvad aims to enhance the capacities of school teachers to respond to their individual stresses and psychosocial problems during the COVID pandemic. The webinar will also enable teachers to understand children's anxieties and concerns in the context of the pandemic, including the interventions needed to help children to return to school and educational activities. Part 1 of the webinar, titled Stress of Teachers and Teaching During the Pandemic, deals with the psychosocial mental health impact of the pandemic on teachers and ways to respond to the situation. We are delighted to introduce our speakers for the day, Kenikrino Junior Divitsu, Deepika Singh, and Pragya Tank. Thank you, Team Sambad, for this opportunity to collaborate with you. And over to you for the session.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Kavita. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. And thank you very much, Orion Black Swan, for organizing this very special session with the teachers. Good afternoon to you all teachers. Well, our introduction is already done, and ma'am has already described our objectives also. So we wouldn't be getting much into that. But we are very glad today to be with all of you, to be able to talk about the scenario, about what teachers are going through during this pandemic, and also the scenario of how teachers will respond to students when they come back to school. So those are the two main purposes because of which we are, in this session. And we are very glad. So to start off with the session, there are so many problems in this world. There are different kinds of problem. And right now, the very big problem that we are facing is the pandemic. And then everybody has a wish that this pandemic will be gone. Everybody has a wish that Achanak say, this pandemic will just disappear, but that's not possible. So what we do here at Samvad is, instead of looking at problem focused approaches, we look at solution focused approaches. So that's how our sessions will be a lot to do with activity based session. So we are not focused on theories, we are here to focus on activities, because we can talk a lot about problems, but then when we talk about problems, the end result will be, what should we do about these problems? So that is what our focus is. And so our session today is especially for teachers, so that we can be able to help you in the little ways that we know. We already know that you are going through so much of stress, especially with the COVID pandemic, especially with your online classes, with blended classroom, and then with your own personal other things that you have in your life. So we are here to help you. So for this session, since we have so much of participants, we might not be able to involve everyone in our sessions, but we would like to request you to be with us throughout the session and every activity that we do. Maybe you might not be able to share what you have done or what you have written down or what your opinions are, but then we would love it if you could go through it with us so that it will really help you, especially not just for this session, but especially for your lifelong professional career. So to start with, we'll just show you the slides. Yeah. Yeah. So ma'am Kavita has already shared about our agenda for today. Our session today is on understanding the stress of teachers and teaching in classroom during COVID. And she has already shared the objectives, which I would like to read it out once again. The first one is to enhance the capacities of school teachers to respond to the individual stresses and psychosocial problems as they occur in COVID times. The second one is to enable teachers to understand children's anxieties and concerns in the context of COVID, including interventions for assisting children to return to school and educational activities. So, when we were talking about teachers and the times that the teachers are living during this pandemic, no matter how much experience you have, there are always challenges to face in the classroom and school. Expectations are high from students, from parents, from department chairs and administrators. So this time for the teachers is really hard. They have to look at a lot of different areas in their life and have to manage everything. So which is they're multitasking. So teachers like all of you, you are all multitasking and it has been really difficult for you. So to start off with, we would like to do a simple activity with you. We hope you will like it. This activity we have been doing with the teachers who we are training because it really helps them to have a space to actually vent out or even pen down their thoughts so that they may be able to get out the burdens that they have in their hearts. So the first activity that we would do is called an activity which is called I Feel. So here we are gonna write down all our feelings. So the first thing that I would like to request you is to take a pen and also maybe 5 to 6 loose sheets of paper or even a book. If you have a book, it's okay. It may be a book or some few sheets of paper. So that will be the first instruction that I'll just give it to you. So a pen and 5 to 6 loose sheets of paper or even a book that you have. So it might be whatever. Even for even for the teachers who might be just watching online, you can also do it because this is gonna take some time, this activity. So the objective is to give a safe place to let teachers pen down their thoughts and feelings, especially maybe in regards to this pandemic, what you are feeling, how you are feeling, so you can pen down anything. So there's no definite thing that you have to pen down, anything that you wish. And the method is writing. Material, like I said, pen, 5 to 6 loose sheets of paper, or a book. So I believe by now all of you might have got hold of a pen and a book or papers. All right. So what we will do here is you will write whatever comes to your mind. So we will give you the start of the sentence. The start of the sentence is I feel. So in this one, what we do is you just write I feel ... and then we will give you 20 minutes. So you will have to write for 20 minutes. So I know some of you might be thinking, 20 minutes is so long, but let's see how much you can write, because for some people, even after 30 to 40 minutes, they're like, I still can write, I still have so much of things to write. Some people are like, okay, I'm done, I can't write much. But then let's see, we'll give you 20 minutes. So I'll be timing the stopwatch so that we can write for 20 minutes. So we have 3 strict rules in this activity, very strict rules. Okay, so what we do is when you start writing, you cannot stop writing. All right, so you'll have to continue writing, you cannot stop while writing, even when your hand hurts. So when you write for 20 minutes, obviously, even if you write for 10 minutes, your hand starts hurting, especially if it's continuous and you're not stopping, or you're not, lifting your hand. So your hands will start hurting, but please press on and keep writing. The second one is you cannot lift your hand. So when you're writing, you keep on writing and you do not lift your hand. So that's a hard task. And then the third one is you're not supposed to think and write. So you might be thinking, if I don't think, then how will I write? So what I meant is no reflective thinking. Not when you're writing, you do not have to think and write. So whatever comes to your mind, whatever comes, maybe you are writing and your hand is hurting and you can just write, my hand is hurting. That's okay. But you're not supposed to think and write. You are just supposed to just write whatever comes to you. So there's no stopping and thinking. So there are three simple rules. You can't stop while writing, even when your hand hurts. You cannot lift your hands. You cannot lift your pen. You are not supposed to think. So many people, when they are writing, they get stuck. So nothing is in their head. So you can write, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I do not know what to write. I do not know what to write. So you can continue doing that, and slowly again, things will come in place, and then you'll be able to write. So that's our instruction. So what we'll do here now is we will give you 20 minutes. So I'll time it here right now. So I'll say start, and then you can write I feel and anything that you feel. It might be, happiness, sadness, joy, anything that you feel, you can just write it down. So I'll say start, and once I say start, you can start writing. And after 20 minutes, I'll say stop. So when I stop, all of us have to stop. All right, I hope the instruction is clear. Okay, then let's start. All right. Uh, so now I will say start, and you can start writing. Start. Yeah. For those people who are online and in YouTube, you can also do the activity with us. So the instructions are already out there. So you can, in the slides, so you can see the slide. So you can just do the activity with us. So there are some of them who are already doing the activity. So you just need a pen and 5 to 6 loose sheets of paper or a book with you. If you have that, we will give you the start of a sentence as I feel. So you can write whatever you are feeling. I feel. So you can just fill it up, and then we'll give you 20 minutes to be able to write whatever you are feeling. So you do not have to think about, the right or wrongs that you have to write. So you can write whatever comes to mind. And then after that, there are 3 strict rules, where the first is, when you're writing, you do not stop writing. You cannot stop writing. You have to keep on writing. And then the second one is, you cannot lift your pen. The third one will be, you cannot think and write. So whatever you are writing, it has to just come with the flow. So you just keep writing and writing till the 20 minutes are over. So you do not have to worry about what you have to write. So in the middle, if you think that you don't have anything in your head and your mind becomes blank, so you can even write, my mind is blank, or I do not know what I will write. Or even when your hand is hurting, you may write, my hand is hurting, now I want to give up writing, but then I have to keep on writing. So something like that. So you have to keep on writing till 20 minutes. So the ones who are online, who are on YouTube, watching from YouTube, you can also do this exercise. We would be very glad if you could join us. Yeah. All right, stop. Yeah, dear teachers, you can stop wherever you're writing. Yeah. So this is an activity which you can do at homes when you are, having a free time. Since it's an online platform, it might be a bit difficult, so we have cut down the timing. But yes, I would like to know if from 3 to 4 teachers, how you felt about writing this activity in this activity. How you felt about whatever you were writing. How you felt about this activity. Just 3 or 4 teachers, I would love to know from you. Ma'am Aradhana Chobe. Ma'am Aradhana Chobe. Yes. All right. Teacher Imam has said that it's cathartic. All right. Uh, Forum Mehta teacher has said it's stress relieving. Thank you so much. Yeah. Uh, Varsha Pachori teacher has said that being a teacher, they always love to write. Juhi Shadija ma'am has said that there is so much in my mind, I can still go on and on. Teacher Swati has said that I think whatever stress was there in our mind was written in pages. Yes, so there are so many teachers who are, expressing how they felt about this activity in this chat box. Anyone who would want to also share, would love to hear your voices also. 2 or 3 of you, if you want to take time, then we want to give you time to be able to share how you felt. Teacher Rabia, Teacher Rabia, Teacher Rabia, if you can unmute yourself, we would love to hear from you. Teacher Rabia. All right, so we can find so many teachers who are expressing how they have felt about their activity, this activity. We can see so much of chat. HPSR Nilohita teacher has written that it was a good activity, as from last 1 year we are being only typing was a bit difficult to write. All right. All right, we can see a lot of messages from teachers. We are so thankful. Here, the main purpose of this activity is just to give you a space to pen down your thoughts. So we would not be asking you to tell us what you wrote, because we know that those are very personal things that you have written. So we just wanted to know how you felt about this activity. So journaling is something that help us express much more than we can ever speak out. Many people journal, and journaling is a healthy way of writing down what we feel. And this exercise can help us write down even those things that we are unaware of, especially when you don't think and write. Because when you think and write, you're already analyzing your thoughts, you're already reflecting on what you are thinking. But when you're not analyzing on when you're not reflecting, when you're just writing your thoughts, everything that is in your heart is coming out. So sometimes the release of these emotions makes us feel better. So that is the main reason why we are doing this activity. And also, it is the time of reflection. So sometimes the people around us, they are not always there to understand us, even though they love us. And writing about how we feel will help us release whatever we hold in our hearts and minds. So what do we do with this activity, because there are so many of you. We cannot even interact like we can interact in small groups. So what we do with this activity is, maybe later at night, when you go to your bed to sleep, just before you sleep, maybe a few minutes before you sleep, you read whatever you have written down. And then when you read this, you will read this in the perspective of someone who is just reading a letter given to them by somebody else. So when you're reading it, don't read as if you have written it. Read it as if it's somebody else who have written, and then you are just reading it. Read it and think about what this person is going through, or what are the things that you're noticing in this person. And then after that, we would love it if you could write this person a letter of encouragement, of telling this person how special they are, of telling this person that whatever they are going through, it will in one day, go away. Someday it will go away. One step at a time, one day at a time. So we can encourage this person by writing a letter to this person. And then maybe after a week or after 2 weeks, you can read it. So this letter can be a source of encouragement for you, because a lot of time with teachers, you don't have the time to go out and seek help also, because you're very busy with your work, you are very busy with your family life, you are very busy. So this will also serve as a very good coping mechanism for you when you are really stressed out, when you have problems which you do not want to share or divulge to people, and when you want some kind of encouragement and some kind of comfort, so you can help yourself also. So this is the main reason why we are doing this activity. And then when you are writing this letter, please remember to think, what does this person need, or what would you really want to tell this person. So in that way, it will be very helpful. And also, if there are things that you have written and you don't want to read about it anymore, you can tear the letter up. You can tear it into pieces and you can throw it away, or you can keep it, and you can keep it safe somewhere, so that someday, maybe when things are better, or maybe things are not great, or the situation is totally different from where you are right now, you can read it and you can see it, how long you have come, or how far you have come, or how strong you have become, or how brave you have become. So this is an activity which you can do anytime. So for adults, mostly we do it to 30 to 40 minutes, so that you can really write a lot of things, because 30 to 40 minutes you can have lots of things, especially you're not thinking and things just flow out very spontaneously. So in that way, you can be able to help yourself whenever you are stressed out and whenever you don't have anybody to share it to. So when we say journaling, a lot of people think and write, but this activity, it will be a place where you don't think, you don't have to think, you don't have to, gauge whatever you have to write is right or wrong, but just pour out your emotions and you can help yourself. Yeah. So I hope and I believe that this activity will help you. I hope and I believe that whenever you have a hard time, especially when you are going through so much of things, especially during this COVID pandemic, when the stress are coming from very different sides, then you can help yourself. So I request that you would you know in your free time do this, and also help someone else who is going through a difficult time also do this. So thank you so much for participating in this activity. Now we'll go and look forward, to some things, that some challenges that the teachers are facing right now, especially during the pandemic. So there are different contexts, different factors that are affecting the teachers right now. So the general factors, there are lockdown, isolation, school closure, quarantine, travel restrictions. So these are some general factors which is happening everywhere, because of which a lot of teachers are having so much of difficulties. Now the family factors, work from home, responsibility at home, you have to take care of your family, you have to feed your family, maybe cook for your family, maybe take care of the children. Stress spills over children. So maybe, sometimes, especially with displacement of anger, maybe in a family, maybe the husband and wife both are working, and then they are frustrated because of the situation during this pandemic, also with workload, also with having to juggle between the responsibilities of cleaning the house, cooking, and also working, especially with teachers for teaching. So all of these things, maybe displacement of anger happens when you are doing something and your child comes and you get just frustrated, and then you just shout at your child. And that might be a source of stress for you, because you have shouted at your child, and later on you realize that, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Job loss, some of the people have lost their job, financial insecurity, additional adjustment issues. Maybe relatives are here, maybe also because people have never spent so much of time at home. Most of the time children are in the school, the husband is in the office, the wife is in the school, or maybe the wife is at home but then she keeps on working. So there are lots of adjustment issues that might crop up. And also sharing roles and responsibilities, who is going to do what. Since everyone is at home, who is going to work, who is going to cook. So these are some of the things that might come up. Relationship between parents and children, because a lot of the children normally spend 6 or 7 hours in the schools. So they are not at home so much. Or even with parents, they're always at workplaces, they're doing their work, they're exposed outside. But staying at home the whole day together and not understanding each other, maybe, or getting to know each other in a very different way, that might cause additional stress, health problems, especially with COVID, with people contracting the virus, people being frequently in and out of hospitals. That might be also an issue. Also, already being sick from before, and then with the COVID scenario, things are worsening. So that might be an issue. Excessive worries and for oneself and family members. So there might be people who are very worried about themselves and their family members. Especially those who are not with them, those who are away from them. Maybe there are some families whose families are in a place, in a city where it's a lot of people are infected by the virus. So in that way, there might be many worries. Job related, respecting the expectation of the administration and completing job related tasks, especially with teachers. You have to uh, do everything at home, which is so difficult for you, because there will be administration work that you have to do in the school itself. Maybe you have to work along with your colleagues, but you don't have the time, you are not able to manage that. Blended classrooms, where for a time being, when there were no there was no restriction, and students started coming to school, and then teachers have to give offline classes and also have a Zoom meeting simultaneously. So that might be such a big pressure for the teachers, how to handle it, how to juggle with it. Attending COVID related duties. This has also come into view, how teachers are also having to go for COVID related duties, which also becomes a burden for them, because they have to have the online classes, they have to prepare for their class lesson planning, but then also they also have to go and give their duties. They're also scared that they might get infected by the virus when they go out, their safety, their security, the safety and security of the family. So a lot of things might be going on through the minds of the teacher. Social factors, there's no social network, no peer interaction, no leisure activity, not just for the teachers or their families, especially for the children that they look after. And the most important is school factors. So here we can have lots of things, online classes, preparation for classes, in discipline, in the online classes, how to actually manage the students, because online classes is so different than the in-person class. So how to manage it, children not being able to on their video, children not understanding the concepts, parents calling up teachers to ask for homeworks, assignments, or even concepts that the children don't understand. And it's not just one parent who will call, there will be parents of so many students in a class who will be calling the teacher. So added to that is the pressure of also performing, especially the fear of when will the exams happen. Is the student prepared? Are my students already understanding what I'm doing? Will the students be able to perform well during the exams? So those are so many things that are weighing on the heads of the teachers, and they are really going through a lot of hard times during this pandemic. and also balancing the different needs of the students, because the children in your classrooms are very different. All of them have different needs. When you were in person in a classroom, you were able to gauge at it, and you were able to look at what the particular child needs. But now with online classes and with not seeing the children face to face, it's so difficult for the teachers to figure out, is this child understanding, is that child able to grasp what I'm teaching, the homeworks are not coming, what's happening, is it the child is lazy, or is it the child is not able to understand the concept? So where is this all coming from? So those are so many kind of questions that teachers are having right now. So to take forward with my colleague Deepika, she'll be discussing on another issues, but I'll be ending from here, and she'll be also doing an activity with you. So I'll hand over the time to Deepika now.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you, June, for your wonderful activity and the presentation. I think we often talk about all of these problems, but the difficult part is acknowledging itself how the problem is arising. And as you rightly mentioned, that sometimes we just look at the behavior, what is being shown to the teacher, but what exactly goes behind it. We really need to look at that perspective, and to dive in little more detail, and just to help our teachers more, I will be doing a simple another activity. It's called an identity activity, and the idea of this activity, or the objective of this activity, is basically to we will be talking about how the different classes, like how we need to develop a perspective on oneself when it comes to relation with others. And we will be also discussing how the individual problems and concerns are much more than the teacher's identity. So we have talked about a lot when we were journaling. We learned that we do have our own set of problems, but we really need to look beyond from that problem. And how are we going to do that? For that, we will be doing a small activity. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay. So again, a small request. I would request everyone to grab a piece of paper and a pen. And on that, we will be I will be also showing you an image where you will be dividing a body. You will be making a body outline, and you have to imagine that this is you. And you will be dividing the figure into four parts. June, can we have the image on board? Right. So as you can see from the image which is being shown to you, on your head region, you will be mentioning your roles and responsibilities. It will encompass all your responsibility you perform as a teacher, as a family member, as a friend, and the list goes on for us. And when it comes to areas of improvement, you will be writing it on the upper part of your body, that is your chest. And you will be writing like the things in life you wish to work for. So we already know that we are teaching children, and with this pandemic, we are also now talking about the online classes. We are not able to manage time, and there are certain kind of ideas or hobbies you want to pursue. There are certain things that you want to improve in your personal as well as your professional lives. What would be some of those areas? So we'll write that in the area of improvement. Then comes the as dreams and aspirations on hand. So we often dream and we often think about that, oh, I wish I could have done that. And we majorly focus the thing. We stay in reality so much that we tend to forget, and we tend to forget to dream about certain ideas, about certain thoughts and actions. So in that, on your hand, you will be writing your dreams and aspiration. And when it comes to the stomach area, you will be talking about your own strength, the things you are good at, your own characteristics, and the special gifts that you have, which probably which is like a hidden potential in out of you, and you really want to showcase to out of you. So we'll spend quite some time in this activity. We'll take 5 minutes I would request everyone and also our viewers on YouTube who are joined through different streaming channels to do this activity along with us. And I think after a break of 5 minutes, I think once you have completed this idea, we will take some responses and see that why we have done this activity and what was the agenda, what was the rationale of doing this activity. So once again, on your head region, you have to mention your roles and responsibilities. Your upper body, you have to mention the area of improvement, your dreams and aspiration on your hands, and your strength, the qualities that you possess on your stomach region. Okay, I can already see responses coming in from the chat box. So anyone would like to share their responses, what they have mentioned, their roles and responsibilities? Okay, so Moshmi ma'am has written, she has mentioned the roles and responsibility as mother, as a teacher. When it comes to area of improvement, she has mentioned time management. Then Krupal, sir, teacher has written, serve the society. Then Amin ma'am has written, conducting Zoom classes, preparing the links and the lesson plan, give time to friends and families to motivate and guide students with a smile. Achal teacher has written, mother, wife, teacher, administrator. So Rabia ma'am has written, to be friendly and guide students in an effective way through effective communication. That's great, ma'am. Okay, making better citizens for tomorrow. Keep promoting the values of education. Enough time to give to children, strength, ready to learn and improve in all the activities. Dreams, to be a writer. Okay, we have a writer on board with us. Responsible for teaching the children as well. To perform best of my abilities. Okay, so as You can see I'm so happy that the chats are pouring in and you people are sharing your responsive. I'm hardly able to keep up the track of these chats with my responses, but it's great that you were so reflective in your ideas. You were so reflective in talking about your roles and responsibilities. You were able to introspect and mention what are the different areas of improvement which we look into. We still working, and then also we still have certain dreams and ideas, and we still have our own strength which we want to hold on to. So to be able to consolidate the entire experience, the lived experience all the teachers have shared with us. First of all, I would like to thank every teacher for writing the responses, also to the teachers who have participated with us in this activity, and they're not able to write their responses in the chat. But I think it's a great way to reflect our own identity, and how it's not only our own ideas, it's not only our identity as a teacher, it's basically the ideas how we perceive ourselves. And it is something which is defined by other people, looking at my own strength and the relationships that we have in the time of stress. And this is something you can always use to your own advantage when you feel that the time is really hard, you're not able to concentrate, or you're not able to perform in a class. The kids are not listening to you in the online classes, and you're really juggling with your energies. So this is something that you can really do and reflect. You can always keep this paper close to your heart. You can keep it in your wallet, and whenever you feel stressed out or you feel it's a burnout, you can always look up to this, and you can realize that you still have your own identity, and it is much more than being a teacher out there. And along with that, I think it's also very important to uh, to actually realize that it's one thing that there are dreams and aspirations which gives you hope. There would be certain ideas you want to execute in the upcoming month, in the upcoming year, in the upcoming months. So those are those dreams that you look forward to. You hold on to your dreams. It gives you joy, it gives you happiness, it brings a state of relaxation for you. So these are certain ways in which we need to perceive our own identities and understand ourselves in a better role. So we have seen that we play, and we play a very important role, and how these different roles and responsibilities are not only things that define you. We have also discussed that these qualities you have is something that when you look into the totality, it includes the dreams which you carry, the talents which you have, the qualities that makes you who you are. And I think to begin with, this realization towards making that you are so much more than your own identity, and the thought of it can be very precious and can be very beautiful. So with this note, I would like everyone to reflect on the body line which you have made, on the different roles identity you have mentioned. Just keep looking at, just keep adding to your list. Maybe there are certain ideas which you might be not able to write at this particular time, but maybe when you are sleeping, and then you must be awake, and you will be discussing that, oh, this is what I look forward to, and this is what my dream is, and how I want to pursue it. And then probably you can plan your baby steps to it. So this was a certain ideas that we want to give you when it comes to the identity activity. And along with that, we have also realized that can we please move on to the next slide? Okay, so this one thing that also makes us realize that the interaction between the teacher as well as the student is very healthy, is very precious. And today we will be specifically talking about the school problems, which is forming one of the major stressors for the teaching community, which are faced by the teachers during this pandemic. And where does it all start? How can we take forward these problems? But before that, an idea that needs to come, that a happy teacher as well as a happy child. So one idea that we firmly believe is that teacher can be happy only when the child is happy. So the positive environment not only comes through the interaction which is happening, but it also comes from the surrounding in which the child is staying, in which the child is actually positioning herself or himself. So when we talk about all of these aspects, and it is very important to realize, when there is a positive dialogue between the teacher as well as the children, it creates a certain environment. It helps the child to strive forward in their own lives. And to give a certain example, like imagine a child who is sitting in an online class, and the child is having some kind of a problem where the child is sitting and attending your class. But imagine your one greeting, your one smile, or maybe your one of your gesture can make such a difference into a child's life. And how do we attend to all of these information? How do we answer to all of these? How do we initiate all of these with conversation with these children is very important. So this is how can we can lead we can connect a child as well as with the teacher, and then we can promote a very interactive as well as a positive environment. So along with this, we now we'll talk about a goodness, a teacher element, where we will be focusing on the importance. We'll be talking on the goodness of fit, where we'll be focusing on teachers' attachment as well as the relationship which is present there. So goodness of fit, basically the main rationale of having the goodness of fit with the teachers. Before that, we need to understand that what do we mean by the child's temperament. So imagine there is a fire drill in your school, and the drill is happening, and you see certain students of your class. They are very energetic, they are happy. Some of them are just relaxed, some of them are not at all responding, they are busy with their own works. So these individual differences or the behavior which we see is actually define the child's temperament, how the child is trying to present in front of us. And basis on that, the environment with which the child is interacting, and which also forms the basis of the child development, the goodness of fit we often talk about. So the goodness of fit here mentions, can we please move on to the next slide? Goodness of the fit talks about how the child temperament is actually making a connection, making an interaction with the teacher's own ideas, own attitude, their own perception, as well as their own parenting practices. And the whole idea of having these the interaction and the goodness of it is to define, is to have an understanding that there are some alterations that can be made with these children, the how we engage with a certain child. And I know, like, teaching a class of 30 to 40 children, it might be a very difficult, a very taxing work to know each and every child. But the point is, if you know each and every child of your own class, you will be able to cater to their needs. You will be able to establish a very positive environment when there is this kind of interaction and the dynamics are happening into the classroom. So that's why the goodness of fit actually between the student as well as a teacher is very important. And it talks about the compatibility of the student's temperament with that of his or her teacher. So now we look into what are the different factors that come into picture, and how the pandemic has really hampered our children. So we will be talking about that. I think June has already covered a bit of it, but I will be focusing from the children perspective, that how it is so important that we also understand that what kind of experiences the child is going through. So when we talk about the different context here, we talk about the general factors. We have the lockdown, the isolation, the school closures, the quarantine was happening, and there were traveling restrictions. Along with that, there were some kind of the family stressors in which we have seen. And when we talk about the family structure, there was work from home. The parents were engaging with their home. There were the stress which was sort of going from the workplace to the home environment. And not only this, if we look at from the another perspective, it was also said that there was a gender equality when it comes to the sharing of these responsibilities, but there was also a heightened level of distress amongst the parents, which actually affected the quality of relationship, as well as the interaction between the teachers and the children, as the family members and the children out there in the family atmosphere. Out there, the stress from the workflows were actually going to the children out there. And along with that, can we please move ahead? And there was additional adjustment issues, right? So there we have the relationship between the children and parents. There was a domestic abuse. There was a research which was done, and it was quoted there was an increase in the 50% of the calls done to the child line here. There was a lack of privacy and the space for the adolescent to share their socio-emotional problems. And it was said, it was a research paper has quoted that the friends are the only way where the students actually develop a sense of belongingness for the school environment. So now when the children are not interacting their friends, and it is all done through the virtual mode, that has also hampered their own friendships. Again, we talk about the different school factors. There was a transition to the online classes. There was a challenges which was being faced by the students as well as from the teachers communities, because they were not tech savvy. They really had challenges to keep up the pace of these online classes. There was a lack of proper space and resources for attending the online classes. They don't have the broadband services. They don't have the proper internet connection facilities. And let me remind you, the children who come from the low socioeconomic status, they were the one who were hit by this pandemic. They were not able to access their classes. They were only relying on the mediums which were available, the calls which were being done by the teachers, the channels, the educational channels on the DD, the educational programs which were running on the television. These were some of the ways in which the school factors has affected these children. There was a lack of extracurricular and outdoor activities. The children are not supposed to go out. And because of this, there has been increase in the trend in the usage of the social media platforms. And not only the social media platform, but also in terms of the violence, in terms of the cyber bullying that is being happening. There has been no control, the parental control over these activities to see, because the child is spending maximum time with the electronic gadgets. And along with this, there has been an alteration in the eating as well as in the sleeping habits of these children. And of course, the lack of the peer time, and also the competitive nature of these children has also declined drastically, because the children are not getting adequate spaces to be in school, to be a part of the extracurricular activities which are happening in the school. So even though all these activities have moved from offline to online medium, but there has been a certain change, and there has been an increased stress for these children who are going through this pandemic stage. So that's where I think a lot of us needs to come in, and when we come and we observe a certain behavior, we need to understand from where that behavior is coming from, what is that particular thing that is deriving that child to actually be so stressful that the child is not unable to share it with anyone, be it family member, be it siblings, or be it the teacher in the online classes. So just to understand this framework better, I would now request Pragya to come on board and take the session forward. And thank you everyone for your time and for listening through all the conversations and the problems which we have discussed right now. Thank you. Over to you, Pragya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepika, for helping us reflect on our identities and telling us about the goodness of fit approach. And at the same time, sharing with us, talking with us about the impact, about the context of COVID-19 on us as teachers or as children. But why is it so important? Why is it so crucial to understand the variety of context that plays in our lives? So for that, we have a framework which we'll be talking about today. Next slide, please. So as teachers, we have seen ourselves getting angry or agitated or sad or depressed at various points in lives, right? We have seen our colleagues getting frustrated. We have seen our children crying, or we have seen them, our children feeling, getting isolated, not interacting much, avoiding food, or having sleep disturbances, right? The patterns of their sleep is disturbed. So we have seen various factors. We have seen behavior coming in, right? A variety of behaviors playing in. But this is how we actually, try to actually locate the problem as. We generally see the behaviors of the children. We generally tend to see the behavior of the teachers. We often see the behavior because it is tangible, it is visible. But what actually lies behind the behavior is something that is very, very important. And for that, we bring to you an approach. So firstly, we will talk about the context. What is the context? So there is a context to every person, every child's problem, right? एक अनदेखा पहाड़ जो कि पूरा problem define करता है. So this refers to the child's location, the living arrangements, and the family situation, which is where the primary experience of the child or the person comes from. For example, is the child or the person, living at home or in an institution? Is the child orphan or abandoned or has a single parent family? Are there a lot of marital conflict happening in the family? Or is one of the parent suffering through a mental or a physical illness? Or are there family conflicts, or there any sort of alcohol dependence at home, right? Has there a death seen in the family? So this defines the context, the living arrangement of the person, of the child. Then we'll talk about the experience. This refers to the child or the person's experience in the living arrangement. It could be the child experiencing physical neglect. That is, the basic survival needs are not met, right? Or the child or the person experiencing emotional neglect, like the child is not receiving love, care, affection, support, because the child might be orphan or being abandoned or has a single parent in the family, right? Is the child's experience of separation or of loss, or the experience could be of sexual abuse, right? Or is there any experience of emotional abuse due to the stigma that plays in the school or in the family or in the neighborhood, in the community? It is very important here to also make a distinction between the context and experience. For example, there could be two children in the same family and they could have the same context, that is the death of the father. Now, child A or the siblings A experience could be the loss, the separation from father, right? Because of the love the child has with the father. But child B could totally have a different experience because of the poor connection, because of the poor relationship with the father. So this is where we need to really understand the experience of the child, right? And how do we understand that experience? is where the inner voice comes in to role, right? So now we will understand what is the inner voice. So inner voice is basically the child's internalization of the experience, right? It is something that plays on throughout our lives like a film. For example, 500 attendees are attending the session on Zoom, and there are thousands of attendees attending the session on the YouTube channel. Now many of you might have the inner voices like, okay, what is this webinar about? When will this end? What is the time right now? So all these things, all these are the inner voices, right? We all experience inner voice at every given point, every given stage, every point of life, right? Between a traumatic event, that is the experience, and the consequence, that is the behavior, lies the inner voice, right? So we need to really understand how critical it is to get in the depth of what the inner voices are. Often we try to manage the manifestations of the behavior, but actually it is the inner voice that we need to pick up, that we need to understand. That is a path that takes us to the pahad, to the invisible mountain of the context, right? For example, a child's inner voice who has recently lost the father could be, why did this happen to my father? Why did this happen to me? So these are the inner voices, how the child internalizes the problem, how the child internalizes the experience. And these are the thoughts, and they are generally on the non-verbal stage, right? These are the thoughts. And then these inner voices bring into place the emotions. Emotions refer to the child's feelings and the psychological state, right? For example, that child who lost the father, who is going through the inner voices as, why did this happen to my father? Why did this happen to me? Now here, the emotion could be sadness, of grief. So we need to really understand that it's not just the context and experience that determines the children's emotions, but also the inner voices. Inner voices क्या है? उससे emotion निकल के आता है. Examples of emotions, variety of emotions could be love, hate, anger, panic, fear, joy, right? These are the variety of emotions that a person or a child experiences. And with the emotions, we now come to the behavior. What is the behavior? And this is the most, I think the most visible part that we actually experience on the day-to-day basis, that we get to look on the day-to-day basis. These refer to the responses to the, or to the final consequences of the context of the experience, right? Unlike emotions, which are internal in origin, which you can't see generally, behavior is something that you can see, that is visible, that can be seen as an action. For example, a child hitting someone, or abusing someone, or isolating themselves completely, the withdrawal, right? These are the actions that we see, and that is the behavior. So here, we need to really understand that behavior is only the end result of the entire process that includes context, experience, inner voice, and emotions, right? And here, we need to really understand that what our focus is on. Are our interventions focusing just the behavior, or actually going into the depth of the inner voice, of the context, and then designing the interventions? Because in order to develop the interventions based on the child, making them child-centric or person-centric, we really need to understand the context. वो पहाड़ हमें खोजना और जानना जरूरी है, वो inner voices हमें जानना जरूरी है, वो internalization हमें जानना बहुत जरूरी है, which leads to that behavior. And based on that, we will be able to understand we will be able to design the interventions. Now, the beauty of this framework, the inner voice framework, is that you can use it from left to right or right to left approach, right? For example, you can go from defining or describing or identifying the context, then experience, then inner voice, emotion, or behavior, or you can take it from right to left, identifying the behavior, then the emotion, then the inner voice, then the experience, and then the context. Now, how does it happen? I'll give you a very small example for that, right? Let's take 4 students, right? And their behaviors are all same. Let's take 4 students which are in our classroom, and they are all isolated. They show withdrawal symptoms. They don't eat their food on time. They don't talk. They don't interact much. Now, when we go dig deeper, we get to realize that, okay, the emotion is anxiety, anxiousness. Then we go dig deeper, we find out their inner voices, dig deeper, find out their experiences. And when we come to the context, we realize that these 4 children have a totally different context. One child has learning disability, right? The other child has experienced child sexual abuse. The third child comes from a family that has severe marital conflict. And the 4th child that experiences bullying in the school. Now you see the beauty of this framework, that 4 children, right? They have totally different context, but the behavior was same. And sometimes when we look into the framework, when we work with the child, we also see the context can totally be the same, but the behaviors are totally different. The context could be the child, the parent of the child passes away, the 2 siblings that I earlier shared, right? Now, because 2 different children, they have 2 different experiences, though they are from the same family. One child says that, okay, one child's inner voices is, why did this happen to my father? Why did this happen to me? The emotion is sadness and grief. The other child experiences, it's good that my father passed away. He was such a bad man, right? And here, the emotion would be anger, frustration. And with this, if we understand the behavior, child A will show the behavior of, isolation, withdrawal, but child B will just hit someone or verbally abuse someone, right? So this is how this inner voice framework helps us. It helps us in understanding every single child. It helps us in understanding what the child's experience is, what the child's universe is, because every single child has a different universe, has a entirely different story. And that story, we need to really understand. We need to look into that story, right? So next time, when you think about that child or that person, and when you get the thoughts of why this person behaves in certain way, why this child behaves in certain way, think about this framework. Think about the 2 ends of this framework and see the beauty that comes after this. When you will analyze the entire behavior, when you will sit in and analyze the context, experience, inner voice, emotion, and behavior, you will get to understand why the child behaves in a certain way, because there's a context to it, and every context matters, right? Let's move ahead. So now we will have, let's understand it more in terms of practicing it. So we will have a case study here, and I will be receiving responses from you to understand the inner voice in a more comprehensive manner. So, yes. In a given school, a child has reported that she was sexually abused by one of the teachers. The principal calls 5 to 6 teachers and asks what they think has happened. The principal asked them for their views and told them to tell him what they think about the teacher. The principal needs to report it to the board. None of the teachers said anything. So I would like you to share what would be the inner voices of these teachers. Imagine you are one of those teachers. What would be your inner voices? You may like to take 30 seconds to think, to reflect, and you can post your reflections, your inner voices in the chat box, or you can use the reaction button, and we can have the participants unmute themselves and then they can speak. Okay, Krupal Yadav teacher has written that to speak out the truth. Okay, sad. So there's one more thing that I would like to add here, is that the inner voices always start with I feel, or I would, this is what I'm feeling. So it always starts with I. As Taranjeet Kaur Saluja teacher has written, I can't suppress myself. I feel that would be wrong to dismiss the fact that a teacher can't do this. मुझे सच का साथ देना चाहिए. If the teacher know the truth, then they should report it. If we have not seen it, how can I speak about it? Right. So there are a lot of inner voices coming into place. I feel whoever it is get punished hardly. I feel I should be more responsible before blaming without knowing the truth. Right? Will I be heard? I feel the principal should have spoken to the teacher. I must tell the truth. I feel a teacher cannot do this. I would speak out the truth. I would not tolerate this. So absolutely, these are the inner voices. I analyze the situation, speak with both the child and my co-teachers. I would speak out definitely. I feel it is really sad to hear about a teacher. Right. So this is what the inner voice framework is about. To actually analyze the whole situation, not just by seeing the behavior, not just by going through the behavior, but actually getting in depth and understanding what the inner voices are, which lead to the emotion, and that leads to the behavior. And inner voices always start with I. I feel the child could be very sad. I got disappointed and try to find the reason. Right. So with this, we move on to the next case study. Next slide, please. I should not keep quiet. Shri Rupa teacher has written, as mentioned. Right. Okay. So now we move on to the next case study, case analysis, which will help us understand the entire framework in a more comprehensive way, identifying problems, context, and teachers in a voice. Lata, a class teacher of 8th class during the COVID pandemic, find to be extremely challenging to keep up with the pace of teaching in online mode. She has never taken online classes before and found it difficult to adapt to the transition. She would constantly seek help from her daughter in organizing online classes during the lockdown. Due to the lack of access to internet facilities from her students, Lata would take classes of these children late in the afternoon, which meant that she couldn't find time to spend with her family, not finding time to do her household chores. She was constantly juggling between her classes, administrative work, and her family. She would often quarrel with her partner and would spend less time with her children. Lately, Lata has been very irritated and is often agitated in her online class. With exams approaching, she feels that she might have to quit her job due to her inability to manage her life. Now, this is the case. Let's understand the case through the inner voice framework. What is the context? What is the experience? The inner voice, emotion, and behavior. Next slide. So, as we can see through the case, the context here as we can rightly see, is online teaching during COVID, right? The experience here is sudden transition to online teaching, lack of orientation on how to teach online, lack of work-life balance. Now, the inner voices here of the teacher of Lata are, why did this COVID come? I didn't even know how to use smartphone properly. How will I conduct online teaching then? I don't know how to take online classes. I don't want to teach anymore. I want to spend time with my family, but how? These classes and work are ruining my relationship. I don't know how to divide my time. Emotion, sadness, anxiety, anger, frustration, fear. And the behavior is aggression, that is quarreling with the partner, as we have seen in the case, spending less time with the children, irritability, and constantly thinking about quitting the job. Right? So with this, let's move ahead with another case study where I would like you all to participate. You all can go through the case study and then respond respond on the context, on understanding the experience, on understanding the inner voices, the emotion, and the behavior. Right. Anwar, a 14-year-old, just finished 9th grade. He has lost his grandfather to COVID-19 recently. The family had a difficult time with the burial of his grandfather as there were a lot of restrictions due to COVID-19. Past few weeks, he is not interacting with his family. When asked to eat, he refuses. He is angry these days and throws things around him. Yesterday, he broke the fish bowl. He's always on his phone and asserts that he wants to go out to meet his friends as he has nothing to do at home. He has also stopped responding to his teacher regarding the assignments. So you may like to take 30 seconds or 1 minute and analyze this in the inner voice framework. What is the context? Ashwini teacher has written COVID-19 pandemic. Moshmi teacher, problem is time management. Divya teacher, emotions are anxiety, sadness, frustration. Okay. Darshana teacher, counseling the child. Context is missing the grandfather. Okay. Loss of a family member. Right. Loneliness of the child. Okay. So context, a lot of teachers have already written in the chat box, and the chat box is flooded with the responses. This is amazing to see the kind of responses that are coming in. Now let's talk about the experiences. Okay. Emotional insecurity, missing school, frustration, lack of care, emotional imbalance. Behavior is rudeness, not to have food, mind is disturbed. Okay. One teacher has written the emotion is grief. Okay. So now let's mention the inner voices. What would be the inner voices of Anwar? We have already figured out the context. We have described the experience. Now let's talk about the inner voices of the child of Anwar. I feel loss of grandfather has caused a drastic change in Anwar. Okay. So let's describe the inner voices. Tanuja teacher has written unable to share his feelings about his relationship with the grandfather. Sharda teacher has written children get frustrated when they are at home. Okay. Inner voices are why my grandfather left me. Okay. He shouldn't have died. We couldn't bury him properly because of COVID. I want to meet my friends but can't. COVID destroyed everything. Very rightly said. Why me in this situation? Why this COVID-19? Why do I have to suffer? Why did this happen? Why only my grandfather? Right? Nobody is there to understand my feelings. I need some space to express my feelings. How I wish school is open and I can open up with my friends. Right, absolutely. I'm all alone. No one is there to listen to me. And with this, the emotions are grief, frustration, loss, separation. And let's now talk about the behavior. Behavior is as written by Ayman Peer teacher. Aggression, that is breaking things, careless about assignments, addicted to phone because of feeling of isolation. Okay. Lack of caring, unable to control anger. He stopped talking to everyone. Disappointment, no interest in studies, withdrawal. Right, right. This is wonderful to see how, you know, the entire framework, all the responses are flooding in. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the teachers who are participating, who are responding in the chat box, who are raising their hands. So let's move ahead. All of you have given very good examples. You have really analyzed the entire framework in a very comprehensive way. And let's see the table. Next slide. So as rightly mentioned by all of you, the context is the loss of grandfather and COVID-19. The experiences of loss, grief, isolation, inactivity. The inner voices of Anwar are, why was I not allowed to see my grandfather? I wish I could have seen him for one last time. I am bored. I want to meet my friends. If my grandfather was alive, things would have been different. Who will understand me now? Right? Emotions, sadness, anxiety, anger, resentment, fear, boredom, and behavior withdrawn, not interacting with his family, aggression. The Anwar broke the fish bowl, throws things around him, refusal to eat. Right? So with this, we will take up one more case. Next slide. We will take up one more case to understand the inner voices. Hina is a 7-year-old girl. She was told she cannot go to school, go to the park to play, and have to maintain distance with everyone. Recently, her neighbors next door were tested positive for COVID-19. Her mother has also told her that if she goes out and plays, interacts with her friends, she and everyone in the family might have to go to the hospital. Past few weeks, Hina has become clingy and there have been episodes of bedwetting. She has stopped engaging in online class group activities and is very tired most of her days. Schools have reopened. The child is absent for 2 weeks, and upon inquiring, she does not want to step out of her home. Take a minute to analyze Hina's situation, Hina's inner voices, her context, her emotions, her behavior. And you may like to respond on the chat box. Fear instilled in by the parents, Okay, so fear is the primary emotion that is coming in. Context is COVID-19. Why only I have to stay at home? COVID fear all around. Inner voice, why did this happen to me? Fear of family, reflections in the child's behavior. Emotion is sad, upset, weeping, angry, scared. I feel mother has drilled the, okay, so one of the teacher is saying the mother might have drilled the fear of pandemic. One of the inner voices is, will everyone outside isolate me? Isolation is the experience. Why am I born in this era? One of the very prominent inner voices. Grief. Okay, why is this happening? Depression. Bedwetting is a behavior. Sadness. Fear of losing any of the family member. Okay, great. Inner voice, I don't want to go to the hospital. Why COVID is punishing me, though I have not done any mistake. Behavior, being reserved, lonely, responding to communication with some persuasion. Many people are going outside. Why am I not going? Great. So thank you everyone for responding. Let's move ahead and see the framework, the context, the experience of Hina. As rightly said, the context is COVID-19. The neighbors next door were tested positive. The experience here is restrictions and inability to move out of her house because of COVID. The inner voices are, what if I have COVID? Will I also go to the hospital? I will stay away from my friends. I don't even have friends with me. I need to wash my hands every 15 minutes. I don't want to study. My teacher will scold me for not completing my work. Right? The emotions are fear, worried, anxiousness, frightened, nervous, panic, terror, and behavior. As you can see in the frame, in the case study, it's clingy, episodes of bedwetting, stopped engaging in online classes, tired most of the times. Right? So with this, we come towards the end of today's part 1 webinar. Next slide. So with this, we are able to understand the inner voice framework. We are able to understand why the context is very, very important, is very crucial. Why it is important to understand the inner voice framework. Why is it important to understand the inner voices of every single child, right? Because those inner voices take us to the context, make us understand what is actually there, because of which that particular behavior is portrayed, because of which that action is portrayed, that is visible, right? So with this, we would like to thank you all for writing down your life experiences, by attending to all the activities, by taking active participation in understanding, in conceptualizing the inner voice framework. In today's session, we were all well versed with the foundation of the context, which we have discussed today. But in the coming session, in the next webinar, that is the part 2 of the webinar series, we will be able to understand the various interventions, which will help us, which will help each of us in our classrooms. With our understanding on the inner voice framework, the next session will focus on addressing the mental health and psychosocial impact of COVID-19 on children. We would also like to invite you all for the next webinar. We really hope that you register for the next webinar and invite your colleagues who may find value, who may benefit from the intervention strategies that will be discussed in the next session. And with this, we have a small little surprise for you, a small video that I think that we all think that is going to cheer you up, and you are going to feel very, very relatable with that video. Next slide.
गुड मॉर्निंग चिल्ड्रन, क्लास शुरू करें? अभी मैं दिख रही हूँ ना? हाँ? अरे
ये क्या हो गया फिर से? अभी आ रही आवाज? अभी
दिख रहा है ना?
मुझे बाद में आके चाहिए लेना, मैं पढ़ा रही हूँ ना।
अरे बाबा रे, फिर से गिर गया।
10 3s are 30, 10 4s are 40.
अब सही है। गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीबॉडी।
सरप्राइज बच्चों।
आज हम नाउन्स के बारे में पढ़ेंगे।
किंग क्या होता है? राजा। मुसीबत के वक्त दोस्तों को नहीं छोड़ना चाहिए।
कल फिर मिलेंगे। बाय बाय।
So, thank you to all the teachers who have attended today's session, part 1 of our webinar series. We can actually imagine a lot of you smiling from the back of Zoom meeting from YouTube channels after watching this video, because it was very relatable and it was funny. And I can see a lot of, the chat box flooded with the responses saying that, yes, it was relatable and it was a great video. So, thank you to each one of you, and special thanks to Nihar Naturals and Shanti Amla Hair Oil for making such a beautiful video. We would also like to share our resources that are that you can find on enhancedchildproject.in website. You may like to visit the website for more such resources, which has the toolkits, which has manuals on life skills. We are also going to share our email addresses so that you may be able to contact us, reach out to us. So as you can see on the slide, we have written down the email addresses as well as the official email address, that is info@enhancedchildprotect.in, where you may contact us. There's a phone number that is given, and you may like to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook for more updates and for getting through a lot of resources that may be very, very useful, very, very beneficial in your classrooms. Thank you, everyone. And over to you, Radhika ma'am.
Thank you, Pragya. Good evening, everyone. I'm Radhika Karthikeyan, Vice President, Teacher Resources, Orient Black Swan. We are privileged to introduce to you today our distinguished experts, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri and Ms. Sheila Ramaswamy. They will address the queries and concerns of the educators in this virtual gathering. A child psychiatrist with 40 years of experience, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri is the Dean of Faculty of Behavioral Sciences Division at NIMHANS and the Principal Investigator of the Samvad Project. His work extends beyond the clinical population to the children in institutions, educational spaces, and in the context of law across India and the South Asia region. With a view to enabling access to mental health for the most vulnerable child populations, his special areas of interest in child mental health or childhood trauma, gender and sexuality, and life skill education. He was part of national deliberations on the POCSO Act 2012 during its drafting, and more recently an active part of the debates around the December 2015 Juvenile Justice Act on children in conflict with the law. He has also engaged extensively as a member of working groups of NCPCR on issues such as substance abuse and elimination of corporal punishment in schools. Finally, all his policy and practice work find their way into training and capacity building programs for audiences, ranging from students of mental health discipline and mental health care professionals in clinical settings to child care service providers in non-clinical settings, including community health workers, teachers, government and non-government staff, and counselors and judicial personnel. Sheila Ramaswamy is the technical and operational lead of Samvad Project. With a background in medical and psychiatric social work and public health, Sheila has worked in emergency and disaster contexts in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Her technical areas of work include maternal and child health, nutrition and food security, water and sanitation, and child and adolescent mental and psychosocial health care. In recent years, though through her work at NIMHANS, she had been engaged in child protection and mental health work ranging from designing and initiating community child mental health interventions to policy and advocacy initiatives pertaining to child sexual abuse and juvenile justice laws. She's experienced in providing interventions on issues such as childhood trauma, adoption, and children in conflict with law. Consequently, she had developed a number of intervention methodologies and materials for assessment and intervention, including life skills education, for therapeutic and transformation work with children and adolescents. A large component of her work involves development and implementation of training and teaching programs through the use of pedagogies of participatory and creative methodologies. She trains various cadres of child care service providers within schools, health facilities, and child care institutions, as well as members of the judiciary on a range of child psychosocial care issues. Dr. Seshadri and Ms. Ramaswamy, on behalf of Orient Black Swan, I would like to thank you for taking your time to be a part of the webinar. Over to the question and answer session now.
Good evening, everyone. We invite you all to post your questions, whether you are on Zoom or on YouTube. We can then take a look at both sets of questions and do our best to respond as many as we can in the time we have left. Thank you very much. So we can start now. You can shoot. Archana ma'am says, children are gone in a comfort zone. Will it be easy for the system to join back schooling? Archana ma'am, you're absolutely right. You know, there is a certain comfort zone that children have gotten to over the last 1 year of a certain kind of routine, a different one from what they had before. So changing a routine is never easy, not for any of us. So what we are going to do, in fact, in our next session, next Saturday, is look at a range of activities and interventions which you can use to bring children gradually back to the old school routine, because it is going to be a little hard. Some children will find it easier. Some who, as you've been discussing this afternoon, will have their own anxieties and take a little longer. How do we deal with some of these children who are anxious? What are things we can do to make coming back to school easier? What are activities, strategies that we can use? This is what we're going to be doing next week. So do join us for that session. You'll have a more detailed answer to your question.
I also wanted to say that this whole issue of will it be easy for them to join school after what has been a reality so far needs to be looked at from the perspective of any situation where you are in a particular reality and you have to move into another one. For example, you have fallen ill and haven't been able to go to school for a month, or there are some difficulties in the family and you miss school for a period of time and then you have to go back to school. The crux, therefore, is in preparation and in the process of preparation. Preparation is always a process. So you envisage into the future and then you work backwards to then prepare children to go back in a way that nothing comes as a surprise to them. So this is some kind of stuff that you really need to keep in mind. That this is, of course, embedded in another question that Janab Aman Peer is asking, that it's related to online classes for a long time. And the framework that Pragya had discussed about the context, experience, inner voice, emotion, behavior paradigm, and how will we work on this through an online mode. Interestingly, someone had posted on the question and answer this business of, is the world going to become paperless soon? And should we be environmentally conscious and save trees? That methodology or pedagogy is particularly interesting. And I think the online mode has come to stay. We cannot wish it away, even before COVID. As you know, there are many agencies that specialize in offering online educational courses. So it's a question of how you use, and may I even dare say, subvert the presence of the digital world to our advantage and really use it to equip children with life skills and with thinking ability, and so on.
We have two more questions. Chanda ma'am says, how can we overcome child's boredom during this pandemic phase? One of the things is about creating alternative routines at home, because children are now expected to get online, to do online classes for a certain period of time in the day, especially older children. So what other activities can we create for children at home? If they have the ability to get out physically, can there be time for games and exercise, if that is allowed? If there are people living in cities like Bombay, this may be difficult. So if spaces are small or other families are not allowing their children to play, then what family games and family time can we create? Can physical activities be done in small ways, even in small spaces? Use of skipping ropes, a little basket that can be suspended to play basketball in a small space. So activities of that nature. And there still needs to be a routine at home for children, a wake up time, school time, so to speak, play time, TV time, leisure, time to talk to friends on the phone to maintain social connections in as much as possible, meeting with family members and relatives where possible, or at least communicating with them online or on the phone, to try and maintain all the activities and routines children had otherwise, but just in a different way. Another question, I think, that we had, how can we direct the inner voices of children during the online classes to remove the fear of the pandemic? It's an interesting question and a very important one. The reason why we all feel anxiety in context like this is because of the unpredictability or the uncertainty of the world or the circumstances we live in. And very often we think that by not giving children information, it's okay, because if you give information they will worry more. That is actually not true. When we withhold information about the pandemic from children, we don't tell them what is actually going on. Children have their own internal processing, as you were just discussing. They have all these inner voices that come into play, and some of their ways of processing information may not be correct. And that is what leads them to more fear and anxiety. They hear all kinds of things. People will die, you will get COVID, you can get COVID in XYZ ways. So it is important, therefore, to give them simple, factual information in age-appropriate ways. How you give information about COVID to a 6-year-old versus a 10-year-old versus a 15-year-old, because of the cognitive level according to age, becomes critical. How we encourage children to be open and ask questions and do our best to answer them in ways that are truthful but reassuring. We've actually written a little story for children on COVID. So we will share that with you. Can we put that link online? We'll put that link online for you, so you can, you're welcome to read it and use it with your students in class to assuage their anxieties. It gives you a method to explain all that is happening around us. Why do we have to wear masks? Why can't we go out? What will happen if I get COVID? All the anxieties that children have, as do adults, in fact, that create anxiety.
Let me take some issues that have been put on chat as well, and try and integrate them into a composite response. Alka Pandya asks, how do we get people into disciplined lives? Someone else asks about the problem of the number of students in class, and how do we deal with them? People have spoken about smartphones and how mentors should prepare, and with the online classes going on, people have spoken about the issue of examinations and how do people master this area. In fact, Irene asks about the whole issue of malpractice and how do you encourage students to be organized and meticulous while attending online classes. This is a question from Abha, how to deal with teenage students and what's going to happen in the future if these online classes continue. This is Mamta's question. Let me integrate these questions into a composite response. And I had actually put this on question and answer itself a little earlier for those who are on the Zoom link, but I will say this for those who are on YouTube as well. One of the questions, dear teachers, that we have to ask ourselves and indeed enable the parent and public system to understand is, what is the purpose of education? What is the purpose of education? And literacy, gaining of knowledge, skills, preparation for livelihood are all legitimate purposes. We have no issues with that. They are noble and legitimate purposes. Would it be right to say that the purpose of education is to help children learn how to learn? Content is irrelevant. It's the process of learning, because most children are wired into taking content in, even given the Gaussian curve that. Or would it be more appropriate to say that the purpose of education is the development of an egalitarian personhood, the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizen, and the development of an identity that is imbued with aesthetic sensibility about the world, about nature, about people, about relationships, about compassion, about pro-social behaviors, about the state of the world and awareness of. So to beat all this into the whole online exams and literacy and knowledge and language and malpractice and so on, it reminds me of a newspaper middle that I'd written once. I said, rejoice, it's examination time. Funny, isn't it? No one ever thought of examinations as a joyous experience. There's always a sense of doom, disaster, and finality around it. Whereas examinations should actually be a celebration of learning, and it never is, because outcome is prefaced over performance. Process, my friends, is more important than results, but it's never enjoyed because you have this whole pressure of performance. That so I was jokingly telling one of my friends who's the director of a set of 6 schools that why don't you have an examination mela, hire a large ground. Of course in COVID you can't do that, but I'm thinking of a post-COVID time, and hire a ground and teachers will set up stalls, mathematics stall and English stall and history stall, and 2 teachers will stand at the entrance, and as students walk in you throw rose water on them, and then they go from stall to stall, open books, create a joy about learning. That so that's a kind of composite response to really understand how you can vitalize a learning experience and create joy about learning, as well as the way that we segue into what we hope is a post-COVID world 1 or 2 or 3 years from now, whatever time it takes. And I suspect it's going to take that long for many cycles to go through. Well, let me come back to the Q&A on the Zoom. And there is, of course, a question and some comments. Could we focus on extracurricular activities to attract children to school with the same attitude? About losing enthusiasm in studies. There's a lot of stuff about screen time and there are guidelines about screen time depending on the age of the child. And this is not just about online lessons. there's the whole issue of television and the mobile phone and social media, and and WhatsApp and SMS, the whole digital world, as it were. And I think in essence, it's a question of time management. The issue is not that we can wish the digital world away, but how do we circumvent it in a way that we perhaps use it to maintain our contact with extended families? How do we use it to relax and keep our experiences of entertainment going, and also do academic work, some technical work, so that the mind, the body, and the social self are vitalized and keep activated there. So all of the questions, when Jayanti Naidu asks, are they spending too much of time in front of the screen? I think the recommendation is very simple. There needs to be a family plan, democratically reached at. So the issue is not no digital time. There needs to be a family plan. And what kind of an example do family members themselves set in terms of the way that they use the digital world? So this kind of a balance would go a long way in really addressing the kind of concerns that parents may bring to you as teachers, and some of the concerns that you yourself may have as teachers who so nobly serve the kind of children that you work with. Sheila, would you like to take some?
We had an offline class this academic year, so we had no interactions and activities between teacher and student. How to change the method of teaching to make it more interesting, Swati ma'am says. And this question perhaps could be related to children's experiences and their inner voices. One technique that comes to mind, or one method that comes to mind where you can make a connect with your students is, what if you had a ritual at the beginning of each session and at the end? What if you were to start your class, just 5 minutes with how people are feeling today, or share one fun thing that happened in the last few days since we met, or one thing that's been difficult. You then become a sort of way for children to facilitate their emotional expression, because children don't have very many avenues. You know how difficult, you've got your own children at home, they don't see very many people, they're just stuck at home with the family. So it's so nice to have other people to talk to and share with. So what if you began every session with 5 minutes of this to set the tone, and then at the end of the session you have a ritual that you can create. You go around and say, can everybody share one word of hope that keeps us going till we meet again in our next session? So, when you create these kind of rituals, it gets children to look forward to your classes online, because you do something different and something interesting. And there is soul and emotion to your class. It's not just about getting online. So this is also a way to know what is going on with some of your children. Somebody said, how do we understand children's inner voices now online? So this is another way to know what children are thinking and what their experiences have been at home. Teachers are also a very, very important part of children's lives in terms of looking out for risks. Who knows, some child may say something that gets you thinking, what is happening in this child's family? This child said something about violence. How odd. Maybe I need to inquire. Is there abuse? Is there violence? Is something going on? Does this child need help? So teachers very often are good at recognizing these red flags because you have the opportunity. So these are some rituals you can create that also help you recognize risks and know what is happening in the lives of your students, in the emotional worlds of your students.
I'm taking an issue that's actually on YouTube. It's a very interesting issue. How do we work with tiny tots? Can you give us some, how do we use methods? And And I'd actually put this on Q&A also, but I would like to share this with you. Some of us are very strongly influenced by the principles of anthroposophy, the work of Rudolf Steiner. Now, anthroposophy is that branch of philosophy that deals with the optimization of human potential. So there is the anthroposophic practice of medicine. There is the anthroposophic approach to adults with intellectual disability as they appear in Camp Hill communities across the world. And there's the anthroposophic practice of education called the Waldorf schools. And what happens with tiny tots, particularly with what we have all collectively experienced, which is loss of ecology, both internal and external ecologies, with the lockdown and restriction of movement, and with the second wave coming and so on. If children cannot go out into the world, how do you bring the world back into the families? And for young children, preschoolers, one of the ways to do that in creative is as simple as throwing a couple of coriander seeds into a pot of sand and nurturing them, and they germinate in a couple of days itself. And the joy of seeing something that you've nurtured to germinate. And this is where art and movement and creativity and storytelling and music, imagination, hand functions. Because for a child, even a discarded toffee wrapper is a plaything because it has texture, it has sound, and it takes flight when you throw it in the wind. Children do not need expensive toys in that sense. They are so creative and have so much of initiative in creating stuff around themselves. So it's a question of harnessing that potential that tiny tots have to create a world of imagination and of learning around these. So thank you very much for that question.
Taranjit Kaur ji from Bilaspur asked a very interesting question. How can we help a child when he's suffering from death of a beloved one? It's a very deep question, and we usually spend 2 days on how to work with children in the context of loss, grief, and death. If you look on our website, we did a series in November. It was our Children's Day special. And we did a story about a little boy called Tariq, and centered on issues of loss and grief. One of the ways in which you can work with children is through stories. You tell a story about loss and grief and so on, and then get the child concerned to talk about his or her own experience in that context and validate his feelings or her feelings, answer his or her questions on what will happen, where do people go when they die, is it my fault? So please do take a look at the story that we did for our Children's Day special. You can listen to it. You can listen to it with this child that you would like to assist, and help the child to talk about his or her loss. One of the things about working with children in loss and grief is that no one ever has time to listen to children and what they experience when a family member or a loved one dies, because adults are so busy processing their own grief that they forget that children also have an experience of it. And you've just looked at this whole concept of a child's inner voice. What are children's inner voices in the context of loss, grief, and death? How do they perceive it? Is this a 5 or 6 year old who doesn't understand death? Is it an adolescent who understands death but is angry that this has happened? And therefore, to validate emotions, to talk more to them so they have the space to talk about how they feel about it using mediums like the story. You can put the link on maybe.
We're going to be putting the link on again, Nimhan's childproject.in. Many of the questions that have been put on the Q&A on Zoom and on chat, as well as the YouTube chat, if you go to this link, Nimhan's childproject.in, there is a section on interventions. If you click on interventions, it says adolescence, and then 6 to 12, and then 0 to 6. And there are socio-emotional modules. There are modules on gender and sexuality. There are hyperlinks and PDF documents which have the associated materials that you can use. There are videos that you can use. And then if you go to the section on training, the aspect that Sheila referred to, which is how to deal with loss and grief issues for children, simple ways in which you can engage children of different ages through creative and fun activities, which are process-based and which are two-way activities. These are activities that adults can enjoy as much as the children they are engaging, would go a long way to. So thank you for this enormous interest and enthusiasm by which many of you are putting hundreds of messages and comments and questions, both on the Q&A and chat on Zoom, as well as the chat on YouTube.
I saw a couple of questions on working with parents, especially on the online issue. Some people have put, how do we work with parents? Now, this is largely a negotiation process, you know, when some parents feel that online education is not effective and that they don't want to pay school fees for a child to have this. I think it would be important to explain to parents the criticality of routine, you know, exactly what they and you experience. You know, what happens when there is this whole breakage of routine, which has happened already over the last 1 year. And while online classes may not be ideal and they come with their own challenges and limitations, at least it gives the child some continuity in terms of education and helps the child to keep moving. It provides a source of stimulation, intellectual and cognitive stimulation for the child. It provides a social world for your child, you know, other children and the teachers and so on to engage with. And without this, there would be even less routine in the child's life because they'd have nothing to do all day, no constructive stimulation. And therefore, while some things are not ideal, they're the best we can do for now, and it's better than nothing. So those are some things you can say to gently, you know, negotiate and convince parents on the importance of online education. And I saw a lot more about parents. You're right that some of these webinars need to be done for parents. And we'd be delighted some of you teachers who are so innovative and have so many ideas could even get together. And as teachers, you know, you could run a webinar for parents, just like we are running for you. And should you wish to do that, you have our contacts. If you have a group of you who'd like to do it, we'd be delighted, I think, to support you to run a webinar for parents. You know, things that you would like parents to know, things you want to communicate to them about online education, about children, etc. We'd be happy to support you to do it. You could lead and we could assist you.
There are a lot of issues that have been put on, you know, how do you make a child more active, more open? How do we have children in class who have different speeds of learning? And, you know, when you speak about online learning, you know, the question that Vineet Mehrotra is putting, does it affect the thinking and learning capacity of the child? These are all related questions. And what I would like to share with you, and interestingly, someone spoke about pedagogy and andragogy and how teachers also need to look at their own andragogic processes. We always speak of intent, content, methodology, and processing. Intent, content, methodology, and processing. Whether it is a math lesson, whether it is life skills, whether it is a precept, in that 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or 1 hour that you're spending with a child or a group of children, what is your intention? Aapka irada kya hai? Uddeshya kya hai? If you're addressing anger, my intention as a life skills lesson is to speak about anger and anger management. What is the content? Vishaya hum kaise chunenge? Will the content be the context in which anger takes place, हम गुस्से को कैसे दिखाते हैं, the manifestations of anger, क्या गुस्सा जायज है, justified versus unjustified anger, the consequences of anger, methodology. Do I do this with role play? Do I show a movie clip? Do I get the children to work in small groups? Do I do journaling and writing? And once they present all this with their own creativity and thinking and initiative, the most critical part is processing. What did this activity mean? What did you learn from what the other person said? Are you in agreement or disagreement? What's something new that struck you as important? How will you apply some of these in your lives? This is called processing. And particularly with the whole issue and concern that many parents have about the excessive exposure to the digital world for young children, there is a difference between processed experience and unprocessed experience. If a 3-year-old kid is just sitting in front of the television, no one is sitting with the kid, and images are coming, they are just a group of amorphous images. They are not converted into information and knowledge or into language formats. Whereas if someone is sitting next to the child and saying, oh, wo dekho, he's eating, or, oh, oops, it fell down, or, oh, they seem to be a family, you're helping to process that image, even if it's a dynamic image, into knowledge and information. So intent, content, methodology, and process, we also use a term which is called meta-processing. Now, the word meta thinking is thinking about thinking. Meta-analysis is analysis of analysis. Metacognition is the cognition about cognition. Meta-processing is processing of processing. So we did an activity, many kids presented their viewpoint, which is one level of processing. And at the second level is, if we put all this together, what does it mean? What are some common things? What are unique things? So the classroom becomes a collaborative community, to quote Vygotsky, where knowledge is jointly constructed, co-constructed. So the students are not the object of your work, they are the subject. So having said that, we are coming towards the end of this first session. We have, June, another session planned with Deepika and with Pragya as well. And I see that, again, the activity level, Orient Black Swan, is absolutely fantastic from the teachers that you have so kindly invited for this session. There are over 300 and 400 questions that have come on the Q&A on Zoom and on chat on Zoom, as well as the chat on YouTube. And we are delighted that the number of participants who came on Zoom have remained constant. Usually in a 2.5-hour session, it goes from 500 to 470 to 400 to 300. And by the time we finish, there are 121 left. It is delightful, teachers, that we started with about 500 plus, and 500 plus of you have stayed. That's an indication of your seriousness of engagement and the love that you have. And this is a trick question that I often have for teachers. Do you teach because you love teaching, or do you teach because you love the subject? And it's a trick question. The answer is, I teach because I love children. And this is a manifestation of your love for the children that you so ably serve, because the role that you play in their lives could change the trajectory of their lives. And let me tell you why. A 37-year-old gentleman comes back to school 23 years after he had passed out. He's a techie in the US, and he goes back to his teacher, who's on the verge of retirement, to say, "Teacher, do you remember me?" And she looks at him through her glasses and says, no, child, I don't. No, how could she? Because he was a 14-year-old cherubic, innocent-looking chap, and now he has a nice white beard and and stuff like that. But he says, "But I've never forgotten you." I don't know whether you recall. I come from a particularly difficult family background, and the truth is, I'm not reconciled with my family. There was a particularly difficult day in my life at home. I don't know what it is that you noticed on my face. I still remember vividly you did me the kindness of calling me gently aside. You didn't call me in front of other children and asked me, "Child, is anything the matter? You appear a little preoccupied." And I told you what the issue was. And it's not that you did anything great, but you said, "It must have been so difficult to contain all this inside of you. I'm so happy you spoke to me. If there's anything you want to ever share in future, don't hesitate to to call on me." And teacher, I have never ever forgotten that act of kindness. Dear teachers, I cannot tell you the kind of role that you can play in changing the trajectory of children's lives, even by one statement on one given day. That's the kind of impact, because children remember. So thank you very much for staying in large numbers, and the 3,000 plus of you who've been on YouTube. Thank you very much again for staying, and the numbers on YouTube have also remained, right? Aurobind, they have also remained. And this is delightful for those of us who work in the area of child protection, mental health and psychosocial care. Having said that, we see you next week with the second part of this session. We will have some method of actually registering the kind of questions that have come both on question and answer on Zoom chat as well as on YouTube. We might actually subject them to categorical analysis and actually get back to you the next time, perhaps in the next session if we have enough time, or we may organize a special session, because if 400 and 500 of you have put down your thoughts, I think that is data. That is data about your sensibilities and your sensitivity, and they richly deserve to be looked at with depth, and we hope that we can do that and come back to you. So thank you very much for your active participation in the session, and it is my pleasure to hand it over to Orient Black Swan to basically close the session. Over to you, Kavita.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Team Samvad, for coming forward to help our teachers in these days of uncertainties. The webinar will definitely help our teachers to balance the challenges of teaching online on the one hand, and on the other, maintaining their own and their children's mental well-being. I would also like to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. We would like to also encourage you to participate in the second part of the webinar next Saturday, the 24th of April, to get the maximum benefit out of it. We'd love to hear from you. Please do share your feedback with us. Good day from all of us at Orient Black Swan.
Safe and stay well.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.